Imagine standing on a frozen Virginia hill, cannon fire roaring, smoke choking the air, as one of the Civil War's greatest generals, Stonewall Jackson, stares down a Union army ready to crush the Confederacy. What did he see at Fredericksburg on that fateful December day in 1862? Was it a moment of genius, chaos, or something else entirely? Stick with me as we uncover the untold details of Jackson's view from the front lines. Details that'll change how you see this legendary battle forever. The winter of 1862 proved to be a challenging period for Abraham Lincoln and the Union forces. Although the president had reassured the public that the war was advancing as expected, the Confederate armies led by Generals Robert E. Lee and Braxton Bragg took the offensive just before the Northern fall elections. While Union troops managed to repel these attacks, the experience left many Northerners disheartened and unsettled. Lincoln urgently needed a decisive military success to ease public anxieties, quiet his political opponents, and bolster the significance of the Emancipation Proclamation, which he planned to issue on New Year's Day, 1863. Lincoln's relentless pressure on the current commander of the Army of the Potomac forced the genial Major General Ambrose E. Burnside to set aside military prudence in order to satisfy the president, despite his campaign stalling along the Rappahannock River near Fredericksburg, Virginia, in November 1862. The river had halted his advance southward, and for 2 weeks the Union forces lacked pontoon bridges needed to cross. Confederate General Robert E. Lee anticipated Burnside's intentions and positioned his troops around Fredericksburg. When the pontoon bridges finally arrived, Burnside decided to cross the river directly at Fredericksburg, counting on speed and the element of surprise to capture the town and its surrounding heights before the Confederates could respond and concentrate their forces. Before dawn on December 11, 1862, Northern engineers began constructing pontoon bridges over the Rappahannock River. Unfortunately for Burnside, both speed and surprise were lost at the riverbank. Confederate sharpshooters positioned along the riverfront by Brigadier General William Barksdale opened fire on Burnside's bridge builders, forcing them to abandon their work. Union artillery bombarded the city but failed to make an impact. Eventually, Union infantry crossed the river in pontoons under heavy fire to secure a bridgehead and push the Southern forces back. Despite this, Barksdale's Mississippians continued to fight fiercely among the houses and streets. Barksdale delayed Burnside's forces for nearly 12 hours, completely disrupting the Union general's plans. This gave Lee plenty of time to anticipate Burnside's moves and concentrate his troops on the hills surrounding Fredericksburg. Ambrose Burnside carefully assessed Lee's defenses and resolved to launch an attack. He found that the Confederates held 8 miles of ridges along the western side of the Rappahannock Valley. Their line was concave, with the center pushed outward away from the river and the Union forces. Attacking Lee's center would expose Burnside's troops to crossfire, leaving only 2 options: to strike either end of Lee's defenses, where the lines projected forward as 2 salients. Burnside chose to attack both ends. His primary assault targeted Lieutenant General Thomas J. Stonewall, Jackson's Confederate Second Corps, at Prospect Hill, south of Fredericksburg. Meanwhile, his secondary attack aimed at Lieutenant General James Longstreet's forces positioned at Mary's Heights and the stone-walled Sunken Road. Burnside intended to engage Longstreet sufficiently to prevent him from aiding Jackson's sector. Visitors to the Fredericksburg battlefield often assume that the repeated Union assaults on Mary's Heights were the main focus of the battle. In reality, the fiercest fighting took place about 3 miles south in the area known as Prospect Hill and the Slaughter Pen. This struggle for the Slaughter Pen essentially represented the true Battle of Fredericksburg. On December 13th, the Union and Confederate forces engaged in battle on the fields south of Fredericksburg, marking one of the most sobering moments in Civil War history. The Union Army deployed half of its troops, about 65,000 men, against Stonewall Jackson's 37,000 Confederate soldiers. Unfortunately, Burnside's orders failed to clearly communicate his strategy. The vague instructions confused Burnside's chief officer on the left flank, Major General William B. Franklin. Unsure of Burnside's intentions, Franklin committed only a minimal number of troops, reducing Burnside's planned massive assault to just 2 divisions, roughly 8,000 men. Major General George Gordon Meade led the main attack with an understrength division of Pennsylvania Reserves, supported by Brigadier General John Gibbon's division. Union artillery was deployed in a vast muddy field soon to be called the Slaughter Pen. This land had once been part of Arthur Bernard's Mansfield plantation and still bore remnants of corn and wheat stubble from the previous harvest. At 10 a.m., the guns opened fire, initially targeting Major John Pelham's solitary Confederate cannon positioned on the Union left flank. An hour later, Northern artillery focused its full force on the hills defended by Stonewall Jackson's seasoned troops. The Confederates held their fire, which prompted Meade and Gibbon to advance at noon. Suddenly, Stonewall Jackson's artillery erupted, showering the attackers with exploding shells and shrapnel. Union soldiers took shelter behind a small ridge, and their artillery responded fiercely to the Confederate bombardment. Both Union and Confederate troops endured a tense hour of relentless shelling. When Union skirmishers fell back from the front lines, Private George E. Maynard noticed a comrade was missing. Bravely, Maynard returned to the battlefield, found his wounded friend caught between the lines, and carried him to safety. For this courageous act, Maynard received the Medal of Honor, the first of 5 awarded for actions in the Slaughter Pen. At 1 p.m., Meade's division surged forward once more. Gibbon, caught off guard by Meade's sudden move, quickly rushed to keep up. Meade's Pennsylvania Reserves broke through a narrow stretch of woods that turned out to be a marshy gap in the Confederate line. His troops fought their way deep into Stonewall Jackson's defenses. To support this, Gibbon launched an attack across an open field with 2 brigades arranged one behind the other. Major General Ambrose Powell Hill's Confederate forces took shelter behind the railroad embankment of the R.F. and P. Railroad. As Gibbon's 1st Brigade advanced, the rebels unleashed a deadly volley of musket fire that halted the Union troops abruptly. When the 1st Brigade faltered, the 2nd stepped in, but it too was repelled, with heavy casualties mounting. Determined, John Gibbon brought forward his last brigade and personally led a 3rd assault, which succeeded in reaching the Confederate line. Confederate forces shot down many Union color-bearers, causing the assault to lose momentum. However, several soldiers stepped up, grabbed the flags, and led the Union charge toward the railroad. 3 men, Philip Petty, Martin Schubert, and Joseph Keene, were awarded the Medal of Honor for their bravery during Gibbon's attack by carrying the colors. Petty saved the 136th Pennsylvania's flag after its color-bearer discarded the banner and fled. Martin Schubert, despite having a medical furlough in his possession, chose to remain with his regiment. When the 26th New York's flag was shot down, he carried it forward until he was wounded. Joseph Keene then took up the standard and continued the advance. By this point, both sides had exhausted their ammunition, and the battle descended into brutal hand-to-hand fighting. Gibbon's troops seized the railroad, forcing the Confederates back into the marsh. Gibbon then ordered his men to regroup before continuing the pursuit into the wetlands. Jackson's troops quickly regrouped and contained Meade's breakthrough. The fighting became fierce and close quarters, but the superior Confederate numbers eventually forced the Union soldiers out of their positions by 2:15 p.m. Just 15 minutes later, the Confederates turned back Gibbon's advance and launched a counterattack. During this action, Gibbon suffered a severe wrist wound from an exploding shell, making him the highest-ranking Union officer injured at Fredericksburg. Swept up in the momentum of their counterattack, Confederate forces surged over the railroad and into the Slaughter Pen, with Georgians, Virginians, and North Carolinians pursuing Meade's and Gibbon's retreating men. Union artillery responded with canister shot, cutting down the attackers in large numbers. The Northern guns slowed the Confederate advance, and Union infantry ultimately forced the Southerners to withdraw from the field. Colonel Edmund N. Atkinson was wounded and captured while leading a Georgia brigade into the Slaughter Pen, becoming the only Confederate brigade commander captured in the battle. Meanwhile, Union Colonel Charles H.T. Collis of the 114th Pennsylvania earned the Medal of Honor by saving the artillery from Atkinson's men. The splendor and pageantry of both armies had been shattered and stained with blood across the fields near Prospect Hill and the slaughter pen. The battle resulted in approximately 9,000 casualties, 5,000 Union and 4,000 Confederate, scattered throughout the woods, marshes, and open terrain. These losses matched those suffered at Marye's Heights, where the Union endured 8,000 casualties compared to the Confederates' 1,000. Once Burnside failed to overcome Stonewall Jackson, victory at Fredericksburg was out of reach. The outcome was essentially decided. Upon hearing the news of Fredericksburg, Abraham Lincoln lamented, "If there is a place worse than hell, I'm in it." His political standing hit rock bottom, as did Burnside's military reputation, leading Lincoln to replace him with Major General Joseph Hooker. Though victorious, General Robert E. Lee was deeply moved by the devastation in the slaughter pen. Observing Meade and Gibbon's impeccably dressed troops alongside the shattered units retreating across the fields, he quietly remarked to James Longstreet, "It is well that war is so terrible, or we would grow too fond of it." Wow, what a journey through Stonewall Jackson's eyes at Fredericksburg. I hope you're as blown away as I am by the grit and strategy of that day. So, what do you think? Did Jackson's decision seal the Confederate victory, or was it luck? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one and love hearing your takes. If you enjoyed this deep dive, smash that like button. It really helps the channel, and hit subscribe with the bell icon so you never miss our next Civil War adventure. See you in the next one.